So this is going to be the second part of the two-part introduction to the candidates. The rules for the debate are as follows. Both tickets will respond to the exact same 18 scripted questions. A coin will then be flipped to determine who will go first. Following the first question, each ticket will take turns going first. Each ticket will be given 1 minute to respond to the question asked. If one ticket mentions the other by name, the opposing ticket will be given 30 seconds to issue a response. If the moderators are not satisfied with the answers given to the questions, they will then be asked a follow-up question or request clarification. Tickets will have 30 seconds to respond to this follow-up question. Tickets will be given 3 minutes to state their opening statements. Whoever speaks at this time is up to the tickets. Following the initial 18 scripted questions, the presidential candidates will be asked to answer 3 questions specific to their platform. Immediately after this, we will turn to the open mic portion of the debate. Tickets will be given 1 minute to issue a response to the questions from the audience. At the end of the open mic portion of the debate, tickets will make a 3-minute closing statement. When the ticket's time to speak is over, a bell will be rung. This bell will be rung until the candidate has quit speaking. There will also be a card held up to indicate the candidates are okay to speak. When the card is green, candidates are free to speak. When the card is flipped to the red side, that will indicate that the candidate's time for speaking is up.
Okay, so we'll start with the coin flip. Who wants heads?
We'll take heads.
Okay. Heads.
Awesome.
Would you like to start?
Yeah, we'll start. All right, so our timer good?
Yeah, so you'll have 3 minutes to explain your platform, and then it'll be Savannah and Tyler's turn.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll get started then. My name is Harald Hilseth. Thank you for everyone who has attended this debate. I am currently the Edward R. Murrow College of Communications Senator, and I'm running to be your next ASWSU President.
Hello, I'm Devin Holsey, and I'm currently the Chair Pro Tempore of the 47th ASWSU Senate, and I'm running to be your next ASWSU Vice President.
Yeah, we're just going to get right into what this campaign means to Devin and I, to the hundreds of people we have talked to in apartment land by knocking on doors, to the dozens upon dozens of student groups we've had the pleasure and opportunity to speak to over the last few weeks, because this is a crazy ride. But the thing that we want this to be about continuously from year to year is about everyone in this room and all the communities you both directly and indirectly represent. Knowing that at the very beginning of the day, there's a lot that does connect us as Cougs, and if we don't address that, then we're never going to reach that second half of it, which talks about your individual issues that you deal with in your communities, your individual communities, whether or not that's traditional Greek life, UGC, we're talking about students from first year to fifth year, RHA, multicultural communities. It's an incredible thing to know that we have the opportunity here to intersect those, to lay a foundation where if we deal with these wider issues like prioritizing collegiate well-being to us, amplifying your student voice, expanding community, all these incredible things that we've gotten to talk with you all about for the last few weeks. We gotta make sure that that intersects with your individual issues, and that's what this campaign is about. It's about everyone in this room and everything you all care about and want to see out of your student government.
Yeah, and Harald and I have both had a history with this. We've both tried to fulfill these ideals through our time in the 47th Senate, myself as the Chair Pro Tempore and the leader of the Senate, and now we're trying to transform that, bring that up to the next level. Harald is obviously President, and myself as Vice President, who would also chair the Senate.
Yeah, absolutely, and this entire campaign, again, going back to student issues and student voices, every year we make promises, candidates will make promises. We believe because of that experience and where we've come from that we can directly give you more than a promise, guarantee that we will be back. We will continue this campaign for the 12 months after voting ends on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Because if we do not continue the message, if we do not continue talking to you all and showing up to the communities we've spent the last 3 years in ASWSU showing up to in the last 3 weeks especially, then there's not a way we're going to be able to make sure our staff represents a 2018 Washington State University. You know, both of my parents went here in the late 80s, and it looks completely different. It feels different, but it's something we should all be proud of and be ready to define what our generation of Cougs are going to make out our experiences as students here in Pullman, you know, to be in the very end of the day.
Yeah, and with that, Gerald and I really want to emphasize the fact we are here running as the student ticket. We are here for students and Cougs and no one else. We are not here for the administration. We are not here for past ASWSU administrations. We are here for you all. We are here for these communities. We are here to bring in your voices. We are here to listen and to learn and to try and do you all and your diverse issues justice.
And we want to ensure and say that at the end of the day, when you slap a diploma on the wall, that you are proud to say, "Go Cougs," and I graduated from Washington State University doing what I was passionate about.
All right, go ahead, Savannah and Tyler.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Savannah Rogers, and I'm running for ASWSU President.
And my name is Tyler Partram, and I'm running for ASWSU Vice President.
A little bit about us. Currently, I am an all-campus senator for the ASWSU Senate. I've also been involved in ASWSU Senate last year and ASWSU Communication Committee my freshman year. And I've also been a part of RHA as the president of my residence hall, and I'm a member of Alpha Omicron Pi.
Yeah, and I'm also a all-campus senator, as well as chair of the Senate Finance Committee and ASWSU Budget Council. Student leadership is something that I've always been passionate about, through middle school, high school, and then last year serving on RHA. So we have a really great opportunity.
Yeah, and Tyler and I, when we first decided that we wanted to run, it was really about, we want to make positive, impactful change here on campus. And change is not something that's stagnant. It's a process that you must continue to do. And so we want to continue to work for change and work for students and really listen to students and hear what you all want to say and take that into our administration. And we have 5 main pillars for our campaign. It's empowerment, accountability, engagement, safety, and education. And empowering really means empowering students for us. Building leaders, having students use their voice and know that it's powerful and they can make change here on campus, something that we've seen especially this past year. And it also means, investing in resources, conferences, and mentorship for marginalized, non-traditional, and first-generation students.
And accountability. So holding ourselves accountable to all of you, and ASWSU as a whole to all students, but more importantly, holding university administration accountable to students. So, when we have our conversations with this administration, we can bring ideas that students have, and we can bring ideas from discussion and things that we want changed on campus. We can bring those ideas to our discussion with the administration and really make change that students want to see on campus.
Yeah, and accountability is also transparency, and that looks like making sure the website is continually updated. We're utilizing social media, and we're reaching out continuously to student organizations and students in every corner of this campus, regardless of what they may be involved in or where they're at. And that brings us to our next pillar, which is engagement. So this is engagement in classes, in clubs, within the community, making sure that every student is involved in one of the 300+ registered student organizations if they so choose. And they're able to know where to start and how to get involved, but also making sure students are involved within the greater Pullman community, involved in Pullman 2040. They're volunteering, they're doing different things and giving back to a community that has given us so much.
And our next pillar is safety, and safety is one of those areas that it's hard to talk about. But having hard discussions about safety and these continuous discussions about safety, not just once, not just twice, but coming back again and again talking about safety and working with ideas that we have with safety.
All right, so we'll get started with the first question. During this past career leadership retreat, there was discussion about creating the ASWSU committees into registered student organizations. What is your stance on this matter?
Our direct stance is obviously we would not do that. We think the oversight that went into that was short-sighted. There wasn't enough direct conversations had with our committees, and we're going to ensure that ASWSU has an opportunity to fund and support these communities and these committees that are underneath us, but at the same time not overstepping bounds, walking in to any given committee meeting and thinking that we know everything about them, but we want to be there, actively listen, and to act originally on what we think as a student government we can do, but no, we will not do that.
Yeah, we really think it's important to emphasize the fact that each of these committees has their own respective interests and perspective, and rather than taking those out of the ASWSU fold, we really think it's important to work with these committees to further bring them in and hear those interests, hear those needs, and try and get ASWSU working on that.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, when that idea was first proposed, we truly believed that it was made with the best intentions. However, the moment that students realized that that was not something that these committees wanted and students wanted, it was shut down and no further progress has been made on that. So our stance is that if this is not something that students want, we do not want to do it. And though we do want to keep the door open that if this is something that specific committees want now or in the future, we want them to be allowed to be in control of their future and how they want their committee to function.
Yeah, and specifically, the role of the vice president is very internally focused, and they work with these committees, on a day-to-day basis. And one area that I really want to improve on, this isn't really on the question, but it's, more surrounded by the committees. We want to work to bring more awareness to these committees and hold them on the same level as the execs and as the Senate, because this is ASWSU, and if we have these committees who are looked at as, less than the Senate or the executives, we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to hold them all to one ASWSU.
All right, next question. What specific initiatives and projects would you undertake to make ASWSU more transparent and accessible?
One of the biggest parts of,
They were supposed to
my
start.
bad, I apologize for that.
No worries.
Yeah, one of the ideas that was proposed at Cougar Leadership Retreat that Tyler and I have great interest in is expanding the communication from right now being a director of communication and a deputy director of communication to an entire communication department, and having roles specific to video production, social media, the website, so students are specific to areas that they are passionate about. And then also having this communication department work with different areas of ASWSU, whether that be the judicial branch, working with the Senate Public Relations liaison, or the committee's different PR people, and making sure that we're getting the word out for all of ASWSU.
And also continuing to, as we said, go back to these groups, go back to organizations all across campus, not just these groups that are always talked about. Sitting in classrooms and saying, we're here, let's have a conversation, what do you want changed? Here's what we're working on, what are your thoughts on this? That's something that we really want to continue to do.
Okay, and so similar to Savannah and Tyler, we also really think communication is an important part of ASWSU, and that is literally the biggest complaint about ASWSU is people don't know what's going on, they don't know what we're doing for students, and they don't know how to get involved. And so we really think it's important to expand the communication department, but we kind of have a different vision for it. We agree that there should still be a director and assistant director, but we really think there should be a third seat that is just dedicated to student outreach. And with that, we really want to see this member of our team go out to student organization events and make sure and their meetings, and just take in that information, take in their perspective, and also use the ASWSU platform to elevate the voices of other students. And so we have a large platform, and we should be dedicating a portion of that to student events to spread awareness. And also, when we talk about buy-in, it's really important to make people feel involved with this organization, and we believe that by having that be dedicated to that, we can really get students to feel like we're working for them, we're working with them, and hopefully want to become more involved.
Yeah, we want to add a director of federal affairs position as well, and also a university sustainability and community sustainability position.
Next question. What do you think the university's top priority should be over the next 5 years?
As a university, our priorities should be not only in ASWSU and in various communities across campus, it should be expanding on this culture of what the student body and what the student government does to serve that student body, holding whoever wins this election to an incredibly high standard, so that when we come across next year, it's been really cool to see how many people are running for an at-large seat with the Senate, but having more than 1, 2, 3, 4 tickets running for these positions next year, so we continue to open up this idea, and at the end of the day, the best students will win those positions. But we also want to make sure that we learn about each other's stories, and we have an opportunity to talk with each other about where we come from, if it's in-state, out-of-state, and all these things in between. It would be an incredible thing to have the student government here lead that decision to change culture and further encapsulate what it means to be a Coug.
Yeah, feedback is really the most important thing, because students get frustrated when things don't happen based on their feedback, so getting that concrete would be really important.
The number one priority of the university and ASWSU should always be safety, because if you are not safe, you cannot learn and you cannot live. So that is in regard to sexual assault prevention and awareness, supporting survivors and victims. This is in regard to mental health and making sure that we publicize all the resources we have and making the ones that we have more effective. This is in regard to gun violence and snow safety, ADA compliancy, any area, whether it's tangible or intangible, making sure that all Cougs are safe, whether it's on campus or off.
All right. What values are most important to you as a leader?
I would say that the number one priority or the number one thing for a leader should be service above self, and making sure that people are doing whatever that is in the leadership role for others. It's not for the title, it's not for the position, it's so that they can help others, listen to others, and make sure that the voices of other students are involved in those conversations and heard, and so that, you know, they're able to involve others within that and grow leaders themselves.
And I'd also like to add that, you know, it's about serving by and then leading by example. So, you know, do as I do, not as I say. You know, going out, having conversations with students, not making decisions, you know, in a room with just Savannah and I and then saying, here's our ideas. We really want it to be, you know, we want to talk to students and we want this to be your ASWSU. So from a leadership perspective, you know, leading by example and doing what we want to do with students.
I would really say it's leading from the back and knowing that part of your job as a leader obviously is to lead, but the other half is really empowering other people to lead and make change on campus for themselves, because again, this is your ASWSU. The goal is to let you change it and shape it how you want. And so with that, it's bringing people together around that ideal, bringing people together around the ideal that we want to create a better community and we all want to work together and uplift each other and just all in all make it more complete.
Yeah, and to continuously listen to what communities want, and again, to be that active or passive presence, but to make sure that we are at least a presence and our staff is a presence in your lives, because you're not going to know if we're not going to be good communicators, if we're not going to deal with a similar situation to the CLR this year, and being, you know, constant feedback loops and talking with students about what matters to them the most, but acting on it and keeping promises that, you know, at the end of the day, we could say that we kept, and that we're not going to say anything that we don't stand by as people and that this campaign does not stand by.
All right, next question. In the event that you are not elected, what will you do afterwards?
Now, that's an interesting thought. There will be, you know, one winner, one loser at the end of this. It's continuously being involved in, at least for me personally, I know Devin's got a different answer than this because we talk about it sometimes, but it's being involved in my own communities, being involved in APASC, or if it's me in the jazz band, or if I'm going to work with the Foley Institute, because they got to send me over to Washington, D.C. a couple semesters ago to experience an incredible time working in Congress, and to, you know, work with these other passions of mine. But, you know, I really hope that it works out for us in the end. But continuing passions where communities lie, you know, for my own personal definition of what it means to be a kook for me.
Yeah, I would say just continuing to work for the kook community. I'm going to be working this summer as an orientation counselor, so working with new students is something that's really important to me, so I continue doing that. I also work as a Cougar connector, so I'd love to have more time to get involved with that and continue to try and recruit new students, create a good kook culture. Also, honestly, work, set up for the future, get ready for law school, and yeah, just continue to be involved.
Okay. So over this past month, meeting with groups, we have a list of all the things that we talk about, all the ideas, all the solutions, all the problems. So taking that list, if not elected, going back to these groups and saying, how can we help you to achieve these goals? How can we help you to achieve these solutions, whatever capacity that may be, whether it be joining a committee, whether it be applying for an exec position, or whether that just be a student advocate for other students. Continuing on with the ideas that we have gathered and the information that we have, knowing that students want these things is something that we want to continue to do, even if not elected.
Yeah, I think also making sure that, you know, we're working with Devin and Hurl to help in any way that we can, as well as, you know, prepping for law school, studying for the LSAT. And I've joked about maybe looking into helping the, you know, adopting one of those dogs for training for disabilities, just because I want a dog, so.
What do you think is the most pressing issue in terms of expanding financial aid? How would you advocate that issue as president and vice president?
Yeah, as we said before the brief intermission, I think that the best way to help students in regard to financial aid is lobbying the state of Washington to lower tuition, but with that also having state backfill, so that as students pay less, there aren't more budget cuts here on campus, and that things are still fully funded and you have a quality education, just less money out of your pocket. That also means, you know, fully funding the state need grant, as well as investing in open educational resources so that you are paying less for textbooks. So overall, your education quality increases, but the money out of your pocket is staying in there and you're not paying as much.
And yeah, this actually falls right underneath one of our foundations, and maybe not where some people would see it falling, but prioritizing collegiate well-being. To us, that includes financial health. I mean, I'm $50,000 in debt. And raise your hand if you have any kind of debt right now coming out of college. It's most of the room. So understanding that to expand financial aid, we have an incredible financial aid office here that actually helped me and a few of my friends, and I know thousands of other students here, lessen the burden there. And obviously while going to Olympia and doing, lobbying for lower tuition is incredible. That it's a goal of both of our campaigns. We also just want to see, a constant conversation to continue around how we can prioritize your financial health and opening up ASWSU driven, possibly by our director of finance, lining up what we're going to do with events to tell you how to best spend your money and to how to best budget outside of just your tuition and everything from food to housing as well.
Do you believe the Senate should ever prevent student fee referendums from being voted on by students?
It's a very situational thing, and we obviously had voted down a proposition to fund possibly athletics more for student side of athletics, but it does go piece by piece, because what we have endorsed happily is referendum 47-02, which is to implement a $5 student fee to sustain the WSU Office of Student Media, including the Daily Evergreen, and that gives a tool for students to keep administration accountable and us accountable as well. But where we saw the athletics fee, I actually let Devin talk on this because we talk about this a lot.
Yeah, so with that, we thought it was, the Senate made its voice clear that it was not really fair to ask all students to buy into the fee they were asking for. And again, although they're going to be appealing for a slightly smaller fee for all students, it just doesn't make sense to have these thousands of students on campus who choose not to go buy sports passes basically take on that cost.
Yeah, so I was actually one of the senators that spearheaded that fight for that referendum, and I think you can answer it in two parts. And the Senate was well within their right to vote that down, but I think with that being said, it was very, I don't know how to word it. It was not what we were supposed to do. I think we should have let students vote on it. By not voting on it or not allowing students to vote on it, what we're saying is students aren't competent to vote, and that's not right. We should have given students the opportunity to vote on these fees. And so I think moving forward, spreading that message is something that we want to do.
Yeah, I think if we're championing student voice, we need to make sure that we're allowing students to have that voice and use their voice and share their voice. So I think that it's important to make sure that students are able to vote on all things unless it's drastic to the point where it's unreasonable.
As ASWSU President and Vice President, you will have a close relationship with President Kirk Schultz. How will you effectively be able to voice concerns of students, even if President Schultz disagrees with your stance?
Yeah, I think that the role of ASWSU is to be the bridge between students and the administration. So I think that, during those meetings, whether it be weekly, every 2 weeks, every month, making sure that we're urging Kirk Schultz that this is the voice of the students and this is what students want. And even if you disagree, we need to sit down and have these discussions, have these conversations. It shouldn't just be, Tyler and I and President Schultz. It should be all students being able to talk about these things. And I think that, when students come out to town halls or voice their opinion, it makes an impact, and Kirk Schultz and President Kirk Schultz should really listen to students in regard to that.
Yeah, it goes back to our continued effort to reach out to different groups, reach out to every single student on campus, because 17,000 voices is incredibly strong. And if this is what 17,000 students want for their university and their institution, then we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to voice these opinions and make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that it's in effect.
We will directly guarantee to the student body that every meeting we have, if it's a bi-weekly meeting or a monthly meeting with any of the administrators, from President Schultz to Vice President of Student Affairs, Mary Jo Gonzalez, to Dan Bernardo, that there is a student leader from one of your communities at a literal table with us in Leidy or French admin and talking with about literal bringing to the table of ideas that we don't directly know, but we want to back up what this community might want from the administration while vice versa, talking about them backing up our ideas and what we want to work with President Schultz, et cetera, in terms of administrators on.
Yeah, and it's also remembering the fact that while ASWSU gets its legitimacy from working with the administration, the president and vice president also have a really strong role in keeping the administration accountable and making sure that we bring that student voice and we don't shy away from the tough issues. And again, it's important to at least open up that dialogue.
When addressing sexual assault, what tangible change do you have prepared to tackle this issue?
So when we want to talk about addressing sexual assault prevention, it continues a bridge that needs to be gapped between ASWSU, IFC, Panhellenic, UGC, all these Greek communities, and directly addressing that this is an incredible time to see administrations this year and in past years in ASWSU that have made this a priority, and continuing along with that priority to bounce it into collegiate well-being, to keep students safe. We like to mention that we are the 5th safest campus in this nation, which is incredible, but we need to keep up the work that have been done by the direct student groups and faculty-led groups on campus, either through a director of health and safety and expanding what we are going to do within that position and appointing someone that will be able to directly deal with continuing the prevention around that.
Yeah, and really recognizing and doing justice to the fact that it is a partnership, and we have to work with these different organizations on campus. We have to work with IFC, PAN, UGC. We have to work with health and wellness. We also have to work with the administration. It's really bringing those different voices, and again, when we work together, that's where change happens.
Yeah, I think in regard to sexual assault prevention and awareness, it's really about, one, making sure that we are preventing these things from happening through educational programs and having discussions surrounding this area, but also supporting survivors and victims. You know, 1 in 5 women and 1 in 12 men will be sexually assaulted before they leave college, and we need to be doing everything that we can to support them. And that comes in through the endowment program, the Cougar Health Fund, that we really want to continue to support and champion. Really support that and make sure that we have programs and that we are publicizing these, but they're also as effective as they can be for students everywhere.
As well as having conversations with students, having conversations with health and wellness and saying, what do you need? What resources do you need for us to be a safer campus? And whatever they say, bringing these ideas back to students, bringing them to President Schultz and saying, this is what we need, this is how we're going to do it, and having a very definitive plan and goal in mind when we have these conversations.
How would you help integrate transfer students into the university?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we had this conversation when we went to Political Science Club, for example, and I think that it begins, one, with getting advisors all on the same page, not only here at WSU, but at these different institutions where students transfer from. So, knowing, when you register, do you register as a freshman student or a transfer student? Having advising in line so that transfer students aren't having to retake UCOR classes, and making sure that all credits that they were told would transfer do transfer, and having that transparency, whether it be on websites, within, pamphlets, programs, and having everyone on the same page so there's no confusion and frustration.
Yeah, as well, in the same conversation with Political Science Club, they brought up the idea of having a transfer advisor or someone who oversees all transfer students, not just one person, but a group of advisors. And so looking into something like that to help these transfer students, because a lot of frustration comes when, you don't know exactly what you need to do.
And I know for myself and a lot of other kooks on this campus, this place really feels like home once you begin to get involved and make those connections. And so I really feel like finding ways to facilitate that for transfer students would be a top priority. Again, working with places like the Transfer Clearinghouse, who work directly with transfer students, and making sure they are aware of the opportunities and positions available for them to get involved. Working with Transfer Live, making sure there's information about what to do on this campus, and really trying to bring them into the fold.
Yeah, and also working closely with the transfer delegates sitting on whatever the 48th Senate is going to appoint that delegate to be. And making sure that that delegate is facilitating a lot of these incredibly important decisions and outreach based around transfer students. Because again, we want to play a role in that, but it shouldn't be a direct role where we have a position on the Senate that is dictated to for outreach, getting the stuff out about alive, housing, if we want to lock people down for future success for their short time at WSU, but making sure that they feel a part of this family through working with that delegate, through working with the programs we have already, to make sure that transfer students get to graduate the same as any of us who have spent 4 to 5 years here.
In light of the election of President Donald Trump, we have faced issues regarding free speech and what that looks like on college campuses. How do you envision free speech without restricting the First Amendment?
Right, so free speech, especially on this campus where we are incredibly politically engaged, and that is something that every Coug should be proud of, but defining hate speech and saying that hate speech is when you are going to go up to another Coug and put them down. You're going to not respect their opinions. You're not going to respect what they are here to do, which is to get a higher education. And a part of that is political discourse. It's working with places like the Foley Institute and our Issues and Forums Committee and further funding and working with them. I'm really close friends with Richard Elgar in the Foley Institute and working with those leaders to facilitate these conversations. They already work out so well, but when we have specific instances where it's so clearly hate speech, we will take a definitive stance saying that we are not going to stand for any hateful rhetoric, whether or not you're a student at this university or outside of our community, and coming in to tell us that this is how it should be. We're going to stand with students in making sure that we each respect each other's decisions at the end of the day and our ideals.
Yeah, the definition between hate speech and free speech was first brought up, I believe, during the sit-in demands at the beginning, August 25th of 2017. It was that Friday of the first week of school. And since then, a working group has been created to tackle, this issue of free speech versus hate speech. And Tyler and I want to make sure that, we are listening to this working group and we take any recommendation which is student-led, and we take that and we put that into action. So it's what students say they want the definition to be, but we also want to make sure that ASWSU does draw that line between what is okay and what is hateful rhetoric and what makes Cougs feel unsafe here on this campus.
What role do you see your administration having as WSU faces budget challenges?
Yeah, so as Vice President and President, we serve on the SNAF committee. So one, making sure that we're doing everything we can to be fiscally responsible with your money. So if there's areas where we can, maybe not fund fully, and then other areas that we would like to fund, those are really things that we can do as President and Vice President initially to help with those budget cuts and help with the financial crisis that we're in right now.
And I think also including students in all conversations before any action is taken, whether it be a town hall, a discussion, a forum, and having students voice their opinion on what is proposed to be cut. And I also think that starts with Tyler and I leading the charge within ASWSU and making sure that ASWSU and our administration is as fiscally responsible as possible and that we are not using your money in frivolous ways.
Yeah, so ASWSU has a large seat at the table when it comes to talking about student fees and how those are allocated. So first of all, it's really important to be responsible with those and recognize the fact that if we are going to take $1 from a student, in some way that dollar has to benefit students. So that's definitely the first priority, as well as remembering that, again, our job is to hold administration accountable. And that also means accountable to students. That also means, again, when these budget cuts come out of nowhere and students weren't aware that it was happening, they didn't feel like they had a voice in the process, that's where the frustration comes from. So it's really making sure that the administration does its due diligence when it comes to these budget cuts.
Yeah, and demanding that when we get an email saying that performing arts and multicultural student services retention counselors are getting cut, that you don't directly start that off and you talk with the president and the vice president about why that is happening, and also specify that the entire university and specific colleges are going to be facing additional 2.5% cuts. It's about transparency, it's about communication, and ASWSU has that direct role of facilitating that conversation with the president of the university and all the administrators that will send out that email talking about why we're having these budget cuts.
How do you plan on fighting for cheaper textbooks, as it's something both of you discussed on your website?
Yeah, well, directly going to that, it sends over working closely with our Legislative Affairs Department, working on open educational resources as we have in past years, and that's a thing that we're both obviously going to continue based off of our websites. It's continuing a legacy of an incredible Director of Legislative Affairs going to Olympia and talking with state legislators why we need this, why this needs to be mandated, and also just telling them our stories. And that's the incredible part of Coug Day at the Capitol. I see some familiar faces that we were all on that trip together, and talking with the minority and majority leader of the House about these issues. Incredible to see how in Washington we have education. Both parties want to be the party of education, and we should continue to utilize that through a great Legislative Affairs Department we will facilitate on our staff.
Also really working off the great work of the University Affairs Department and making sure we consider other costs besides just textbooks. So that's things like Top Hat, that's things like iClicker, and making sure we can continue the work that has been done so far to move towards one system and really get rid of some of those hidden costs.
Okay, I'm going to have one follow-up question for you. If you could just explain what open educational resources look like and just kind of expand on what that is.
Yeah, so open educational resources, they're typically compiled, usually professors, it depends kind of on what it looks like, but basically they're a cheaper version of textbooks, they're common, they're usually online, a lot of PDFs, sometimes they're compiled by professors themselves.
Yeah, so we not end up paying, $90, $100 for certain textbooks that vary so much from major to major. It's depending that if we're a comm major or a STEM major that, we're creating equitable prices and we're creating an equitable opportunity for students to access those online textbooks, those PDFs that cost a significantly lower amount than what we're paying right now as students directly from places like the Bookie, or if you're looking at Amazon, lowering those prices continuously.
Yeah, and these are specifically usually for more lower level courses, the courses that students pretty much all have to take, like Bio 101, Chem 101, things like that.
Yeah, if it's Comm 101, you're walking into that, that general room in Todd Odd, and you're going to have a much cheaper textbook to work off of, whether or not it's an online PDF or otherwise.
Yeah, I think open educational resources starts here at WSU and working with professors and deans of colleges and not waiting for the state of Washington to help us out in any way. So continuing to provide incentives to colleges and professors to create their own, textbooks, whether it be, using open educational resources or going fully online, similar to how, the Chem department has, and making sure that we are continuing to fund areas such as Top Hat, and whether it be iClicker, and having that streamlined into one system so that you're not having to pay for Top Hat and iClicker and all these other areas. It's just one thing that everyone within the university has agreed to.
Yeah, as well as open education resources, continuing to have discussions with the student textbook store and saying, is there ways we could subsidize this? Students are paying too much and we need to make a change because a lot of students have expressed that, these prices are too high, and so we need to change that. So having a continuous conversation with them as well as with the committee that is formed.
Residence halls are often left off the ASWSU agenda. What would you do to strengthen the relationship with RHA and better advertise the resources and services offered to residents?
Yeah, I served as president of my residence hall last year as well as vice president the year before. So I see that, sometimes RHA and ASWSU can be seen as two different entities, but I think the best way to do that is through partnerships and working together, whether it be, having resolutions within the Senate in regard to, things with RHA, having students from ASWSU attend RHA, or, continuing to have Tyler and I go, or members from, our executive staff or other areas of ASWSU, whether it be Senate or committees, attend hall government meetings so that we're continuing to have those conversations.
As well as hosting resident hall town halls and inviting these students to come and really just, listening to what they have to say, what they need, what they want, what they like, and continuing to have this open dialogue with these students and really being a constant presence in their life so they know they can come talk to us and they know that what we're doing is in the best interest of these students.
Other than going to RHA meetings and wider events, it was actually our first group that we got to meet with over just 4 weeks ago when this campaign began, sitting through the entirety of a 3 to 4 hour meeting based off of representatives from every hall and intaking that, actively writing things down. Again, if we can't be there, sending out that director of communication and outreach to take down concerns, but including the Residence Hall Association president and cabinet members at that table we were talking about with the administration and Lighty. And including them in not just conversations, but getting tangible results for issues that pertain to first-year students, residents, life in general, the people who help facilitate that if you're an RA and RED, and making sure that you have a direct voice to the administration for an incredibly large population here on campus.
Yeah, and it's really important to address first-year experience. Again, that's the first introduction to campus. It's also one of the most vulnerable times on this campus. And again, when we talk about sexual assault, that first week of being on campus is one of the top times for that. So it's really important to do due diligence and outreach there.
How have you, as student leaders, worked to support our multicultural students in their sit-in demands?
Yeah, I'm happy to say that working with communities and not only communities, but committees like BSU, APAS, METCHA, and being a constant presence at these meetings, it's addressing why we are even worried that CCGRS courses are going to get cut. It's sponsoring and working actually with our fellow senators on cultural competency-based training in our own Senate and also putting forward resolutions as a constant and solidified voice from the association association that we want students to become more culturally competent. We want to implement what has happened with these sit-in demands, but continuously looking forward, we need to make sure that these committees don't die this year, that there's even more done to work with administrators around what these 5 sit-ins demand meant to all the communities that wanted to facilitate it.
Yeah, and it's really remembering again that role in holding the administration accountable and making sure, bringing people to the table to have these demands met, because again, these are things that cannot continuously be pushed back. They have to be addressed, and it has to be addressed on a tomeline that was agreed upon by students.
And so Savannah and I, as senators, work together.
Sorry, we have one follow-up question for Geraldo.
You said that you've been a constant presence at BSU meetings and MECHA meetings. What constitutes as a constant presence for you?
It's being a passively active or passive presence. It's listening and learning about stories like we talk about, and that's why this is incredibly important. Myself, I've been to a majority of APAS meetings. That's a huge part of my community here on campus. We try to make as much as we can between MECHA meetings and BSU meetings as well, between Devin and I, but it's listening to the conversations and sitting through an entire meeting, learning about what we're there for. It's a facilitated conversation run by these communities to teach us what they're about and what their stories are about. And if we're going to go out of pure ignorance and walk into a room and say that we know everything about your community, it's just not okay coming from the president and the vice president. And even in our positions as senators and just students wanting to learn about communities, it's sitting through there, it's participating in the conversation, and it's learning a lot about what the community leaders intended by holding these workshops for us to attend and experience with the community itself.
Go ahead.
So Savannah and I, as senators, have worked on some resolutions specific to disavowing hate and racism on our campus, as well as we voted yes for cultural competency, as well as for the sit-in demands. We've partaken in cultural competency, and we've seen how beneficial it is to students, and how beneficial it should be to all students, and how we should really, continue to have conversations about implementing that. But more importantly, if this question is being asked, then obviously we have not done enough. If this conversation is having now, that means that we have not been doing enough, and continuing to do more for these students is something that we need to do.
Yeah, ASWSU needs to continue to support, the groups who did bring these sit-in demands forward, as well as supporting the working groups that are created in regard to this, and making sure, more importantly, that these working groups continue, but that there's a timeline so students know when change will happen and that action is taken.
You said that you attended the cultural competency workshops. What exactly is cultural competency to you?
Right, so I think cultural competency is more than just it's more than just race. It is all things cultural. It is religion. It is your sexual orientation, your gender, and it's understanding that all of these things make you who you are, and it's all of these diverse backgrounds and all these opinions that make up who we are. And so being competent in each of those areas and understanding where these people come from and why they think the way they do, and really taking a sympathetic approach when we have conversations, rather than you believe this, I don't believe that. It's I see where you're coming from, I understand your background, and so continuing to have conversations surrounding that, I think is really what that means to us.
And also, acknowledging where you do have privilege and working not just to acknowledge it, but to talk about it and work to deconstruct the systems that create that privilege, as well as, talking with other people so that you're able to understand their experience and they're able to understand yours.
Okay, moving on. So this is 2 parts. What do you see as the most challenging aspects of an increasingly diverse academic community, and how has your background and experience prepared you to be effective in an environment that holds diversity as a value?
Could you repeat that question?
Yeah, we can do it at a time. What do you see as the most challenging aspects of an increasingly diverse academic community?
I think that goes along with the fact that we have 17,000 students here, and it's very hard for 2 people to make a decision on the behalf of all these students. So I see the most challenging issue and the most pressing issue right now is that underrepresentation for these students and the lack of conversations that are taking place. So I think our solution to that is continuing to have conversations and not speaking for students unless we have a conversation with them and really hear, what do you want changed on campus? What ideas do you have? Savannah and I, we can sit up here and we can make these decisions, but to address the elephant in the room, we don't come from marginalized communities, so we can't make these decisions because we don't understand, the struggles. And so that is really where it becomes important for us to have a conversation and to listen to these students and to continue to have conversations with these students.
Okay, and then the second part, how has your background and experience prepared you to be effective in an environment that holds diversity as a value?
Yeah, I think that making sure that, we're listening through our experience as, ASWSU senators and as chair of the external committee and Tyler chair of the finance committee and the budget council, really understanding the leadership qualities that are necessary to listen to students and to hear what they're saying, waiting to be invited into these conversations and making sure that, we're not speaking on behalf of others, but we're listening and we're advocating, and that sometimes we can't make these decisions and we need to ask someone else for their opinion and we need to hear from them, and that way we're able to bring that idea to the room. But then also making sure, sometimes voices are loud and clear, they are said, but they are not heard. So making sure that, students are listened to, even if they're, as loud as they may be talking, sometimes they're not heard.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, for sure, thank you.
What do you see as the most challenging aspects of an increasingly diverse academic community?
Yeah, it goes into what we keep talking about. It's learning about where we come from. It's addressing the issue that sometimes the university uses that 35% now percentage of our university being from multicultural or diverse backgrounds as a number. And it just cannot be just a number. It needs to continue into putting these students in the diverse conversation on positions in our staff, because they're incredibly qualified individuals that have never been reached out to in that community. It's understanding that we as the association represent every student, so we need to bridge gaps between students who have not understood or lived the same experiences as maybe their neighbor in a communication class, or if you're in ag or something in Todd Odd, you're sitting next to someone and you appreciate where they come from. You want to learn where they've come from. And that's what actually makes someone completely cultural, not completely, but works on the way to becoming culturally competent. It's learning about stories. It's putting yourself in another person's shoes and walking a mile a day, especially here in Pullman.
Okay. And how has your background and experience prepared you to be an effective leader in an environment that holds diversity as a value?
Yeah, I would really say, first of all, presence. Again, Harald and I have really emphasized the fact in our role as student leaders now that it's important to go and it's important to listen and it's important to learn, and again, it's important to go to listen. It's important to go to listen and not to talk at people. Again, Harald and I really feel that the only way to learn about issues going on in these communities is to be there and to take in that information.
I want to even become directly involved in parts of the community. I had the joy and privilege of being a shaping team leader this past semester, and that was an experience where you have first generation students coming in from parts of Washington and high school students that want to go into higher education. Those are the next generations that we need to feed and show them the incredible things that diversity brings to WSU. And that's how you bring retention rates up. That's how you can increase diversity. That's how you increase cultural competency, is by learning about these stories even at a very rudimentary level with high school students that want to do their family proud. They want to do Cougs proud everywhere by coming to this university and help expanding what it means to be a Coug for this entire generation of students that we all hold very close and dearly. There it is.
If given the opportunity to serve as president and vice president, how will you make sure that you and your staff are taking concrete actions on campus and not just having discussions?
Yeah, it means telling people and the students we're going to go try to talk to join our staff, and that again is going out actively to different groups around campus that we've already talked to on this campaign, but telling them ahead of time, this is your #1 priority. Serving as a university affairs head or director of legislative affairs, chief of staff, these are all incredibly important positions we should be having 10, 15, 20 people coming in applying to, but it's telling people this is your #1 priority. You serve students, just a very specific part of campus, in the same vein that we do. And we need to hold that accountability standard high increasingly and just continue to grow it to as high as that mountain's going to take us. Because if the executive staff is not a visible presence in the same sense that we are, then they're not doing their job, and we would not have done our job by appointing an executive staff that will do just that for the students.
Yeah, and it's also reminding the executive staff that, again, Harald and I are here to hold you accountable, but really it's the students who you have to hold yourselves accountable to. You're not taking on this job for Harald and myself, you're really taking it on for the thousands and thousands of students on this campus.
So this starts with our 100-day plan that we want to create. And this 100-day plan is going to be a conglomeration of going to these different organizations and the information that we already have, going back to these organizations, going to these chapters, going to these groups, listening to what they have to say, writing down their initiatives, writing down their policies, writing down what they really want to see on campus, taking that back and creating a 100-day plan that we really work with the students to create. And that 100-day plan will outline specific initiatives, specific projects, as well as specific things that you just want to see on campus that you really don't like or that you want to improve on. So that will, one, hold us accountable, and two, those are specific initiatives that we will do that really students create. It wouldn't be something that just Savannah and I create. It would be something that we work with the students to create.
Yeah, and we want to be proactive and have realistic, tangible promises that we make to you all, and continue to have the tough conversations with administration to make sure that it's no longer just discussion, it's action.
How do you plan on including students who live off of campus or who are not involved in Greek life?
Yeah, I think that it's really important that we're hitting every student on campus. One way that Tyler and I have been doing that is earlier today we were knocking on all the doors in Campus Commons trying to listen to students, answer any questions, and remind them to vote and come out here tonight. And so I think that, continuing to go door to door if necessary, but, having town halls or, going to them, whether it be sitting in the clubhouse of whatever apartment it may be, or going to residence halls, or, going to every single different registered organization sometime throughout the year, even if it's only with 5 students, and listening to them and hearing from them and making sure that their voice is heard.
As well as either the two of us or our team going out and sitting in the different colleges and different buildings and just saying, hey, we're here to listen, give us all the ideas that you have, here's what we're working on. So, a lot of students go to class and go home, so making sure that we're either at home or at the class for them to get these ideas out.
One of my favorite Cougar Connector facts is that Glen Terrell Friendship Mall is named Glen Terrell Friendship Mall because the former president would go out and actually shake students' hands and make sure to have those real connections with people. So I personally would love to see that trend continue through Geralda and myself, actually going out on the mall, hitting those students and making sure we're shaking their hands and getting to know them on a personal level. And then also, again, when we talk about buy-in to the organization, that is so important to foster because, again, when students feel invested, that's when they care about what we're doing. And so really using our platform to talk about things going on campus that aren't just from ASWSU, making sure people know they can utilize that, going to clubs, learning about their events, putting that on our website, sharing that, making sure they share that, so we can really get people to feel invested in our organization.
Yeah, and working with owners and of apartment complexes and property ownerships in Pullman in a similar vein to how we will work with REDs for residence life educational events run through ASWSU and making sure it's okay to go out there while having a balance of going out there and shaking hands every single day on Hall and Terrell Mall.
So now the next 2 questions will be specific to Savannah and Tyler, and then we'll move on to you 2. Oh, they're only for Savannah, I'm sorry. And you'll have 3 minutes to answer.
3 minutes for both questions?
For all 3 questions. So the first one, every year tickets promise to increase communication with students, but implementation is difficult. What tangible steps will you take to accomplish this?
Yeah, I think the first tangible step is within the executive staff and changing, director of communication into a communication department, as previously stated, where there are specific people dedicated to only video production, only the website, only social media, areas they're passionate about, and making sure that, it's continuously updated. The website, is always updated, and there's contact info, and there's photos, so you can recognize students out on the mall, and you can reach out to them, whether it be their email or a phone number that they can be reached at, as well as making sure that anything that, students are doing that are part of ASWSU, that is included, and that students know exactly what ASWSU is, and they have a voice in and are aware of what their student government is doing.
Your campaign platform strongly resembles the current ASWSU administration's. How will your approach differ from the current ASWSU president and vice president in addressing these issues?
Yeah, I think personally, I believe that Jordan and Garrett have done an amazing job, and something Tyler and I have talked about is we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to throw everything out. We want to build upon what Jordan and Garrett have done. There's only so much that they can do in 1 year, and even if they've wanted to do it, they just might not have time. And so taking, this section of what they've done really, really great and building upon it, so then, we're doing a little bit more great each and every year, and the candidates following us are able to build upon that. And so eventually, we're we're able to do the entire alphabet grade, even if right now we're only doing X, Y, and Z grade, and just building upon that. So it doesn't look different because we don't want to do things different. We just want to build upon it and continue working for change, creating positive impact. And, you know, if there are areas that, you know, students do want change, listening to that and making that change, but, you know, just continuing to build upon the great work that they've done.
As an advocate for expansion of cultural competency, what will you do to ensure that we continue to grow within our communities?
Yeah, I think that, you know, the resolution that was proposed by Senator Jesus Hernandez and Senator Casey Kubasumi was amazing in mandating cultural competency for all students, faculty, and staff. And we want that to be something that is implemented, you know, whether it's for students during a live or it's students, you know, during freshman year as well as sophomore, junior, and senior year, only twice a year. You know, making this mandatory for all students, but also having, you know, the checks and balances of making sure this is effective and it works for students. So figuring out, is it best in small groups? Is it best in large audiences? You know, something similar to this. You know, what is best for students? What is best for Cougs? And how do we make sure that cultural competency is something that students are invested in and want to participate in, and so that, you know, we are a more inclusive and safer campus for all Cougs?
So Harald, these are just for you. On your website, you say you plan on amplifying student voice through a summit, although we already have the Cougar Leadership Retreat. How do you plan on changing the retreat to carry out the promises that are made, as well as including students who not hold leadership positions on campus?
Yeah, absolutely. The Leadership Summit was my brainchild when I was a freshman delegate on the 45th Senate. And it's something that went through its ebbs and flows, and getting to a middle point, working with both Kyle Geiger on the when I was on the 45th Senate, and even underneath Taylor Christensen and Kyle Strachilla, 2 administrations ago now, to make sure that we make CLR bigger than it is right now. We give more opportunity for more workshops to be held. We actively make sure there are representatives from every single community on this campus, similar to a summit that's run on a wider global political scale. We need to make sure that the massive leaders of this campus are coming to a single table at the end of the day, and we're getting concrete, tangible changes. And again, that goes to a wider thing of talking about where we are coming from with our stories and what our communities need the most, and understanding that there are so many points that connect us. But if we don't have something like a leadership summit and encapsulating what CLR is right now, growing on it to make sure that it takes over all of campus. It is an event in the Cub where students can come and sit in on our public discussions about what is happening on this campus, whether or not it's, again, from Greek Life, UGC, first year, fifth year, RHA, multicultural students, that there's a representative from every group on this campus in a beautiful space here in the Cub where students can come outside of those communities and also talk with the leaders about what they want out of their specific communities, going with that, yeah.
Building relationships with administrators is key to getting work done. How will you remain the student voice while effectively navigating the university structure around difficult issues?
Yeah, it starts off with getting comfortable with Kirk Schulz in a way of, maybe I could call him. I could call him on any given day and say, hey, President Schulz, we may not know each other that well just yet, but encapsulating what a relationship is with a university president. Trying to push Kirk and his vice presidents and all of his cabinet out of their comfort zones a little bit, to be with Devin and I when we're shaking hands on the mall. I really appreciate the coffee with the presidents that just happened between both Jordan and Kirk, and the understanding that we can be advocates for the student, but also demand respect that the administration also demands out of us. It's a commonality, and if we don't agree on everything, that's all right. But at the end of the day, if we're defending what the students want specifically and the administration does not agree, then we should be doing what the students want. But I want to get to a point where I could just call President Schulz and say, this is an issue that needs to be addressed. If it's not addressed soon, then you're going to deal with these flashbacks. Imagine if that email was never sent out from when the budget cuts happened, because I could just give them a call, or I'd march over to Leidy, or we'd have our bi-weekly meetings, talking with them about what students want so we avoid these things in the future. So if we have commonalities and respect for also what we serve as students, we want to make sure the administration is also serving students first and foremost as well.
A foundation of your campaign is the idea that ASWSU does not effectively outreach and connect with students. Given that you've been a member of ASWSU, how have you contributed to this disconnect?
Yeah, well, I would love to even say that I have not contributed to that disconnect to a certain point, because each individual that has been a part of the Senate or the executive staff should take earnest on what we stand up for as representatives. If it's me serving in freshman delegate role, assistant director of diversity, or now as the senator for the Merrill College, it's understanding that not every one of our ideas are going to get supported by our colleagues. They're not going to get supported by the same group of people that are coming in every year, and they're doing incredible work. Our colleagues are doing incredible work, but if we don't diversify those voices, if we don't make an active effort to come out to your clubs right after this campaign and to tell you that these applications are open, then we're not going to be doing our jobs as president and vice president. The reason I have pushback against that is because we're trying to implement things that Devin and I have actively tried to work on over the last 3 years in student government, and it's been a long learning process. And understanding that now we have an opportunity to work with the student body to implement some of these ideas, but also implement your ideas and your community ideas, and to stand up to what we want the Cougar identity to be, what we want to do with prioritizing collegiate well-being, and et cetera, et cetera. It's taking what we've learned in the past, fixing what our own personal mistakes are, but also implementing what we have had such a difficult time working on because we haven't had a diversity of voices. Not to say that once we get into office, 100% of the stuff's going to happen, but it's making promises to constituents that we can live up to, even if we've been a part of the association for a good part of our lives.
Okay, so we're going to take 3 more questions from Twitter, and then we'll move to questions from the audience. So Savannah and Tyler, we'll start with you. Will you be supporting the Daily Evergreen referendum, and why?
Yeah, I think the Daily Evergreen is great in the fact that it provides students with a way to learn, hands-on exactly, what is needed within the journalism field. But I think going back to a point that Tyler and I made earlier is it's important for students to vote on this, and it's not fair for us to continue to say, hey, we want to listen to you, we want to do exactly what you say, and then go out and tell you exactly what to do. So we want students to come out, and we want them to vote, and we want them to make their decision heard, and from there we want to do everything that we can to support that decision.
Oh, yeah, same answer. Yeah, I mean, I was the main senator who authored the referendum to make sure that the Office of Student Media, and thus the Daily Evergreen, will be able to continue functioning on a daily capacity. It's understanding that this institution of journalism and working within the Merrill College and seeing the beautiful things that can be done within the Daily Evergreen, to continue that institution, to hold administration accountable, like we said previously, and to also hold us accountable so that the students are picking up a paper every single day and reading up on not only those accountability standards from administration and in-depth pieces, but also what your fellow students are doing in their organizations. Again, going back to the whole community aspect of what it means to talk about your lives every day and to learn from each other's experiences and to learn from each other's passions and appreciating them. The institution of the Daily Evergreen is synonymous with not only the Merrill College, but with this university, and that's something that everyone should be going out and voting yes on come Tuesday and Wednesday.
What do you see as the greatest success and failures of the Frost Call administration?
I think one of the biggest successes has to be what they went out to do at the very beginning of the day, which was to change a conversation, was to continue conversations that have happened in the past, and being an active presence on Twitter and being an active presence in Greek houses and RSOs, going on tours throughout the last few months, and us wanting to maybe continue that on a wider level. But sometimes we don't always agree on some of the stuff that has happened from the administration, including the decisions made around CLR and respecting the work that went into that. Actually, Devin can speak on that because she sat on that board.
Yeah, I would just say, again, communication in terms of outreach, really important, and I love the fact that they prioritize that. I guess one point I see as a growth point would be internally working more with the programming and service committees, making sure that they feel like their voice is heard and they have decisions in the process and they really are brought up to that same playing field. And again, really capitalizing on that opportunity to get those diverse perspectives and bring those into ASWSU.
So I think the greatest success that the Frost Call administration has seen is that outreach and those conversations that they've had with students. Something that I thought was quite interesting was at dinner with President Schultz. He was just baffled at how many meetings that they have gone to. And for the president of a university to be baffled by that kind of surprised me. So the fact that they are, capturing the attention of the president by how often and how accessible they are, I think is something that is incredibly successful with their campaign and something that we want to continue.
Yeah, and I think a growth area was just not having enough time. I think that Jordan and Garrett have tried to implement and do every single thing that students have wanted from them and what students have wanted for this university, but just simply not having enough time. It's going to be the difficulty of every ASWSU president and vice president, but it's the way that things are.
Both tickets have been a part of ASWSU for multiple years. What would you say is your greatest contribution you've made with this platform?
Yeah, I would say the thing I'm most proud about is last year working with Director of University Affairs Colleen McMahon and Senator Lindsay Skilperut to help create the Cougs Feeding Cougs program, which is a program that helps give money to students who are facing food insecurity so they're able to go get a meal at Hillside, at Northside, at Carlita's, wherever it may be here on campus, and so they're able to eat, which is a fundamental need of life.
I think for me, serving as the Budget Council chair and getting to work with the committees, and then during Budget Council, getting to hear what they have to say, listening to the events that they put on, and then talking about how we're going to fund them and effectively fund them, I think is something that I'm very proud to say that I was the chair of that.
I would say the concrete changes that I have made are my proudest achievement. During my time as part of ASWSU, and I would say specifically, if I had to pick just one, it would be actually working with then President-elect Frost and getting free menstrual products in the Cub, Chinook, and the UREC Center.
Yeah, and for me, it's been the honor of serving the Murrow College as a whole and working on what we've done this year, creating really close connections with Cable 8, the Daily Evergreen, working with the interim dean, Bruce Pinkleton, on the referendum to save the Daily Evergreen, on honoring one of our legends on this campus, Keith M. Jackson, through a resolution that passed through multiple parts of the Murrow College, and finally working on getting Adobe Creative Cloud products free for students within the Murrow College, the College of Business, and the College of Education. And while we did recently get a step back in terms of funding, that will continue not only with this administration, but we will continue to talk about the innovation that the Murrow College inspires, and that's something that I've been so proud to facilitate serving all my constituents this year.
And our last question, on a positive note, why did you choose your running mate?
I'm going to start. Devin Holsey cannot be encapsulated in a minute, and we need to split this up, but I met her 3 semesters ago when we were in Poli-Sci 102, and it built up to a point where we become best friends with each other over the last 10 months. She leads with so much empathy, acts so courageously, leads this Senate to heights that I've never thought that someone in ASWSU can lead a group before. And I really love her very dearly for those leadership qualities, but for also understanding her students that she served from a day-to-day basis.
I wouldn't have ever run with anyone other than Harald. He has the best heart for leadership. He really has the best heart for serving students. He cares so much about really doing his diligence for his constituents. And Harald also, he cares about uplifting others. We share the same values. And that's really important to me, is to look over and know that the guy next to me is someone I believe in. He's someone I see in this leadership role, and he's someone I truly see positive change coming from.
We don't want people to see us as president and vice president, but rather a team.
So I chose Savannah because she believed in me, and I see the potential, and I see how much compassion she has and how she believes in every student on campus and how she believes she can bring the best out of every student on campus. And if she could make me feel that I was competent and that she believed in me enough to run with her, I think that that's something that I really want to help facilitate, so she can help all these students on campus believe in themselves and reach the best potential that they can be.
Yeah, and I would say, Tyler and I picked each other also because we're a really great balance for each other. We both want to make realistic and tangible change, and we have very similar ideas for where we want ASWSU to go, but, Tyler just has the best heart, and he cares so deeply, and he wants to help students. From the moment that he stepped on campus, he was looking for ways to get involved and serve students and make change and, improve the lives of Cougs everywhere.
Okay, we'll now take questions from the audience.
All right, everybody, we're going to start back here with current ASWSU President Jordan Frost. This question will be for both of you.
Yes.
Hello. So my question, one of the least seen parts of the ASWSU president is the ability to be an executive. So hiring staff, disciplining staff, managing budgets, managing resources. So can you talk to us about your direct experience being an executive, but also give us some insight into your leadership style and how you would approach some of those issues?
And the candidates will have 30 seconds to respond to these.
Is this just for
It will
Gerald
start,
and I?
it will start, no, both of you?
30 seconds each.
Yes. Just the president.
Yeah, so I served as the Honors Hall president last year, and so through that, having to, be an executive and make the agenda and delegate tasks and, work with the cabinet, that's something that's really prepared me, as well as being the chair of the external committee, the exact same roles in working with students and, making sure that people get their job done and they're held accountable, but also having that compassion and that care for the people who work with you so that, things are done, but they're done with love.
Yeah, for me, it's serving under President Christensen and Vice President Strachilla, actually, with Jordan Frost as my chief of staff when I was Assistant Director of Diversity Affairs, and having both the backgrounds in the Senate and the legislative branch and the executive branch has led me to understand and solidify a process with Devin about how we will impact our communities through getting more people to join this staff and understanding that there have been so many highs and lows throughout different administrations, and we're going to experience our own, but directly being a part of the executive staff before has led me to this point.
You got one over there?
Yeah, we're gonna go right here.
Hello, coming from someone part of the multicultural Greek community, maybe I can speak for some, but that I feel that the other Greek communities are not really aware or culturally aware of what the multicultural Greek community does, what steps or what should be done about that problem.
Well, directly we need to start talking about what the UGC president is going to be working with the president of Panhellenic and IFC, and understanding there's a lot of commonalities between these, other than talking about a background in education and cultural competency again, but solidifying that these three serve incredibly purposeful parts of our community, and we need to see more collaboration come from the side of IFC Panhellenic with you at UGC and vice versa for community service projects to hold educational events and to respect each one another's communities going forward.
Yeah, and I would also say just, publicizing, the multicultural Greeks more and more, working to make sure that the Library Plaza is renamed, the Multicultural Greek Plaza, making sure that that happens and that the monuments that are created, students know exactly, what they're there for and what they represent, and, whether that be having more programming directly for multicultural Greeks during Alive so that students know that this is an option coming in as a freshman.
All right, we're going to go right here.
Hi. So both of you have set your outreach priorities toward multicultural students and things like that. How would you go about bringing in other students within the Cougar community, such as students with disabilities, international students, veterans, and traditionally underrepresented students such as those?
Yeah, so I think that starts with the definition of inclusivity means all Cougs on campus. It doesn't mean a certain group, it means every single Coug on campus, 17,000 plus. So working with the resources that we already have, continuing to have those conversations, what more do you need? How can we better facilitate this change? How can we better serve you? And again, having those conversations with these students, going to International Student Council meetings, going to SVC meetings, and being a presence in these students' lives like never before.
When Haral and I talk about outreach, we do really want to emphasize the fact that it is our goal to hit every single group on this campus. Every single group. Haral and I don't believe, again, when we talk about embracing our communities, that means all of our communities. And so we want to do that outreach. We want to go to those groups. As Tyler touched on, we really want to go to their meetings specifically, but also working with different administration and organizations that worked with these groups as well. Again, the Transfer Clearinghouse is a great example, but going to the International Student Center, making sure we are present.
All right, we're gonna go over here.
Hi, I'm from the multicultural community, and so a lot of the multicultural RSOs hold big events, and sometimes they go in debt and are they don't have any money for these events, and are in fear of dying out. We heard of applying for grants, but sometimes that doesn't go through or isn't enough. What else can be done to help these organizations?
Well, it really does start with that funding and where the funding comes from, because if the idea is there, if your passion is there to hold an event for a community, then ASWSU should 100% be able to facilitate it. We talk about the educational advantage behind some of these and why some of the funding might not be there, but we have an incredible amount of funding that we can send out to communities across campus, and we should not stop at any community, including the multicultural community, and making sure that every one of these events are funded to further supplement what your family and what your friends and that group here at WSU means to you, so we get that through.
Yeah, I think that, it goes back directly to funding and making sure that, students know that they're able to apply, to the ASWSU executive staff and, the Crimson and Gray Fund, and making sure that students are educated on how to apply for this so that, they're able to obtain those funds. And it goes directly back to our pillar of empowerment, empowering students a part of, marginalized, multicultural, non-traditional, first-generation students, and investing in these conferences and resources and programs and mentorship for these students.
We're going to go right here.
So both of your campaigns have been reaching out to a large amount of groups here on campus, and I think that's absolutely great. But the question I do have is, how is the plurality of voices that you guys are reaching out to, how is that going to affect the way that your guys' administration will run?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to the point of having diverse views, and we want every single voice to be heard on campus. We want 17,000 voices. We understand that that's going to be a difference of opinion, but really it starts with listening to students and making it a student government. So I think how it's going to affect our administration is it's going to be an ASWSU for the students. It's going to be your student government.
Yeah, and along with that, Harold and I really wanted to use our campaign as an opportunity to get feedback. Every single group we've gone to, we have asked them for their feedback, for issues that they might want to see incorporated into our campaign and possibly our administration. And again, it's going around and recognizing the fact this is an ASWSU for the students and making sure we have that time for students to give us their input. And actually seeing that updated on our campaign website, really making sure that there are concrete moves to address the needs that have been brought to our attention.
Okay, I have a follow-up question really quickly for Savannah and Tyler. So you talk about recognizing diverse opinions and views. How are you going to make sure that you're valuing these opinions and you're not putting them to the side, and you're making sure that they're coming forward, as it's not something that would directly affect you?
Yeah, I think that, it goes with also making sure that we're going back to these organizations afterward and that things are implemented within our 100-day plan. And if things aren't included in, the 100-day plan, that it's not something that's stagnant, it's able to change. So students say, hey, this is something that we wanted, why isn't it included? Us going, okay, yeah, we're going to include it, here it is. And so then we're continuing to hold ourselves accountable, and it's something that continues to evolve so that we're able to best serve students.
As well as publicizing that 100-day plan so students are aware.
We're going to go right here.
Yeah, so it's a question for both tickets. If elected, as soon as you go into office, the university will go into summer operations. How do you plan to utilize the summer, and what can we expect to be tangibly done by you during that time?
Yeah, we'll be here every week of the summer. That is, again, my bad. I'm just lost in the clouds.
You can go for it.
All right, cool.
You've already started, go.
Well, we can talk about how we're going to spend every week here this summer going forward with our plans, with our executive staff, implementing the concrete issues that each one of our directors and aide directors are going to be able to concretely work on over the summer, so we're ready to hit the ground running when Week of Welcome begins. And Devin's going to be an OC as well, so she'll be interacting with a lot of these first-year students we would be serving. So it's going to be an incredible opportunity to experience summer in Pullman, but to also continue that service and making sure that we're ready to hit the ground running once Week of Welcome hits.
Yeah, Tyler and I will be here every single day of the summer if elected, and we want to make sure that, one, we get the 100-day plan out, a couple of weeks into the summer so students know exactly what we're doing while we're here in Pullman, making sure that we are reaching out to Alive, and as well as continuing to update social media. Kooks won't be here in Pullman for the most part, so the best way that we can interact with them is through social media, is through website, is through videos, and letting them know exactly what's happening, whether it's a, weekly update or every 2 weeks.
Okay, we'll go right here.
Hi. Is this on?
Yep.
Okay. So you both mentioned a lot of tangible things you want to do when you're in the position of ASWSU. But I want to bring up, what kind of things are you guys going to do for, intangible things? And I want to, hear what Savannah and Tyler have, because one of the intangible things that I'm thinking of is safety, and I know that's one of your pillars. And the reason I bring it up is because I think it's safe to say that last year, the ASWSU president and vice president had a lot on their plate when the racist video came up for WSU, and I know a lot of multicultural community weren't feeling really safe. And then even the non-multicultural community, I had a friend who said he felt like he was getting mean looks as if he made the video by the multicultural community. And I just want to touch upon like what kind of things are you going to do for like intangible things as like safety, just for all WSU students and everyone in general.
Yeah, I think that's where ASWSU plays a role in drawing the line of what is okay and what is not okay. And, ASWSU leading the charge of, if something comes out, such as that video where students don't feel safe, disavowing it, saying it's not okay, and doing everything that we can do to make sure that doesn't happen again. Having conversations surrounding these areas and, just making sure that ASWSU is doing everything that we can to make sure that Cougs feel safe.
Did you want your question also asked or answered by Herald? Oh, yeah. Herald.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Right, no, exactly. But it's taken a stance against when a video like that comes out and saying, again, that's an example of what is hateful and what this community, specifically with all the undergraduate students at this university, should not stand for, is a video like that coming out. And if anyone feels like they're getting attacked like that, it's facilitating more than just that conversation, but action to say that we do not stand by this, and future generation of Cougs should not do this to the multicultural students, to Greek life, to people in RHA, because when you feel safe, you're able to fully encapsulate what it means to be a Coug and get home your education.
All right, we're going to go right here.
This question's for both candidates. If you were to win, what is the sort of legacy you want to leave behind, something you want to be remembered for on this campus?
I want to see a culture change. I want to see a culture change within ASWSU. I want to see an ASWSU that does its due diligence, that does its outreach, that makes sure to bring in those diverse voices. And again, this is something that I haven't seen historically happen in my time within ASWSU, and I think that's something that absolutely needs to change. And if we can start that, if we can raise students' expectations so they hold administrations to that higher standard, I would be satisfied.
And I think the legacy that we want to leave behind is that we, this university, this administration is a microcosm for the greater world and as well as the nation. So the old adage, a ripple can create a wave. If we can start that ripple here, we can effectively create that wave on campus and change that culture in the world and in our political climate in the nation. And that starts with ASWSU administration and having that understanding and talking to students, listening to what they have to say. Things like prioritizing safety, improving education, starting that ripple here and having it turn into a wave.
We'll go right here.
Hi. So I'm currently a member of an RSO here at WSU, and it was made aware to our organization that there was cultural competency training brought to campus by the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for members of Senate that had already attended but would like to expand it to other organizations and go to this training and give critiques so that it could be made available to other organizations such as my own, but nobody showed up. So I'm just wondering how that could be of change within both of your administrations if elected.
Yeah, I think that, making sure that we're getting the word out, and I think that a lot of it came from the miscommunication of, we had already attended one, so we thought, do we need to attend this one as well? So, having students know that each cultural competency training is different and unique based off of the people who are there and the people who are facilitating it. So it's important to attend each and every one because you can learn so much more depending on, who's facilitating it, who is there, and it's a unique experience and opportunity each time for students.
Was also making sure that cultural competency training is an outside of a classroom educational experience that students are actively wanting to become a part of and want to learn again about different parts of what culture means to them and what culture means to the wider university we're at. That goes with that culture change that Devin was so passionately talking about, because that's a huge part of this campaign, is making sure that people want to do these things. We don't have to just come out to every group. We should continue to do that now, but it's laying the groundwork so that when we get to a point in the future, people will be out the door trying to get in those cultural competency trainings because of how special it is.
We're going to go over here.
Hi. So this upcoming year, I'm going to be one of the CASH co-chairs, and I want to be speaking for all the conferences that are happening, so Vibes and Shaping. So it seems like every year, we're limited to what we can do, especially when it comes down to budget. And every time we're starting to assimilate with the budget, they want us to go lower and lower and lower every year. So what do you plan to tell the administration, how, like the importance of this conference and why these conferences are important to bring more diversity. And like, basically what I'm saying, how do you plan to advocate for these conferences on basically budgeting? Because that seems to be the biggest limitation on bringing more students here or doing more activities here within the campus.
Yeah, we need to make sure that those the lowering of that budget does not happen when we are in office. And again, a culture shift where that doesn't happen in the future. If it's cash, if it's vibes, if it's shaping, we both also need to be at all those conferences, showing our faces, not just for the students we serve here, but hopefully for future Cougs that we can inspire, and these conferences can inspire to come to WSU. And we need to make sure that the president of the university and the vice president of student affairs of the university are also at those conferences to see the direct impact they make. They're incredible. You need to make sure that that is sustainable over time, and that's a part of that culture shift as well.
Are we good? Okay. So I think the first, it starts with bringing in students who have been impacted by these conferences, getting their testimonies and having them talk to our administration, having them talk to the Senate, and really understanding what kind of an impact that these conferences have. It goes back to our empowerment pillar in empowering these students to say, this is how this has been impacted me. This is how it has positively impacted my life and made me come to WSU, and this is the reason that I came here. So those students' inputs and those students' testimonies and their experiences is really what we want to incorporate.
We have one here.
Hi there. As we approach the midterm 2018 elections, we have a lot of Cougs that are moving in during the fall that are not registered to vote over here in Pullman. So I'm curious, what will your administration do to ensure not only voter registration, but also voter turnout here in Pullman?
Yeah, I think that goes directly back to a resolution that was just passed by the ASWSU Senate of, having students, register to vote when they are moving into their residence hall, having whether it be the election board or the Issues and Forums ASWSU committee or the Cougar lobby team, having these students out on the mall, in the Cub, telling people register to vote, and then when it comes time to making sure that they vote, making sure we are, giving students all the resources they need and all the motivation they need to vote and be engage in civil discourse.
Well, simply put, Cougs vote. And that's even something that was made in 2016 in terms of an ASWSU initiative to get more students, no matter what political alignment you have, to make sure that you are registered to vote in Whitman County, to vote on both local and national issues. Because if we're talking about the advancement of Pullman as a city and also what's happening on national level, we need to make sure every single first-year student is registered to vote. People within the other spectrums of our campus are registered to vote, whether it be through paper or online, that we have a say, and we're known as a university as people who vote.
We're going to go right here.
Hi, this is for Savannah Rogers. You talked about outreach to all the communities, and recently there was the Adobe Suite funding, and I believe you were on the committee for deciding whether or not it got approved or not, and I'm a part of one of the communities that uses the Adobe Suite heavily, and I just wanted to know what obstacles you face into not funding the plan.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it was a really difficult decision made. And, I'm a student who would really greatly utilize Adobe as a Murrow student, and I think that it came down to the fact being that what was requested for the Adobe was a third of all the money that we gave out, and we didn't have the money to give the money, and it was either we can give you $50,000, $100,000, but how much is that really going to do if we're only giving you, a portion when it's really a package deal and really saying, come back next year.
We're going to go right here.
Hi, so I feel like during elections it's really easy to create a really vast platform with a lot of things that you're interested in doing for students, but realistically our university system isn't always conducive to that. So how do you reconcile the differences between what you're interested in doing and what you can accomplish?
Yeah, well, it directly hits back to what is intangible and what is tangible. To us, intangible things like changing a culture need to continue to happen, but making tangible connections to that culture change includes going out to communities and telling students that we need you on these committees. We need not just one person sitting on 15 committees that's underneath ASWSU. We need 15 students sitting on 15 committees. So that's an incredibly tangible thing to us that we can try to accomplish during our time in office.
We're going to go to our moderator, Alexis.
Hi, so
Was I supposed to answer that one as well?
I'm sorry.
Was I able to answer
Yes.
that one? Yes, okay. I think that, Tyler and I, we have a couple of tangible items within each part of our platform. So, under education, creating 4-year plans that are able to be given to students, under safety, making sure that we're investing in the endowment, under engagement, really utilizing the involvement survey that's been created by Director Colleen McMahon, accountability, transparency with the website updates and social media, and empowering students by investing in conferences, resources, and mentorship for non-traditional and marginalized students.
Now we're going to go to Alexa.
Okay. Hi again. This question is specifically for Harold and Devin. I heard that you all mentioned that you'd attended a BSU meeting, and I do remember you all when you came, but how do you plan on putting more work into the Black community, specifically because BSU houses 8 different umbrella organizations, including BMAD, Black Women's Caucus, God's Harmony, and different things like that. And do you plan on continuing to attend those meetings throughout the year? And also, we would like to see your presence at the events. So do you plan on attending events? Because the change doesn't just happen in one meeting, it happens all throughout the year at different events. And I know that a lot of students felt like the presence was kind of ingenuine and like, you're here to get representation, but what change do you want to make in the community? And also, what are you learning from the community?
Yeah, it's learning a lot. It's learning a lot that we haven't understood from our communities and our privilege in the back, but also, again, touching on going to events outside of the meetings, going to the Unity Banquet, going to any of the balls, like the Masquerade Ball is incredible this year, but it's also pointing members of your community onto our staff because they're incredibly important individuals within the Black community that we've interacted with that we know want to get involved, and that's going to be going back to BSU and telling you we have these positions open and we want you to become a part of the process.
Are there any more questions? Yes, Ben.
I have a question that I would like both tickets to answer. I think it goes without saying that whoever's elected is going to have a lot of students in your ear giving you a lot of good ideas for implementation and different things you can do to impact their communities. But like we've kind of touched on tonight, time and resources are going to be very limited in your administration. And so how is your administration going to prioritize who and what is going to get your attention on a day-to-day basis?
We'll start with Harold.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we'll just jump right into talking about our expanded executive staff and understanding that sometimes if you're going to be an A director of something specifically, there should never be a day that one thing is more important than the other, but we will have people on our staff that will be directed towards parts of campus that need that specific attention every single day. If that means working on something one week, going into the weekend and saying on Monday, we have a tangible change to this, we're going to see if it works, then that is the way that we need to go. But it's splitting up positions, using all the money we have in our budget to appoint as many people as possible to our staff who will be able to deal with specifics.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot that ASWSU does well, but there's areas that we don't, and that's where our priorities need to fall, is the areas that we haven't done well before, where students have said things and we haven't listened. It's making sure that we're prioritizing the areas that really need to serve students so that we can, do everything that we can good, and then from there we can continue to raise the bar and prioritize areas that need more improvement.
Thank you.
Go right here.
All right, so I'd like to follow up on the Adobe question, and I myself as well is affected by this. And so all the students were supposed to get funding for the free Adobe programs, and I'd like to ask Harold and Devin about what does the Adobe programs for all students entail?
Yeah, it entails looking at what digital literacy is to a 21st century WSU, getting to a point 3 years down the line when we get funding for the initial 3,000 licenses we're looking for, but making sure that students graduate from this university proficient not only in Microsoft Word, where we all get Microsoft 365 for free, but making sure that it goes even further. And we work with Adobe. We've seen this work at the University of Utah and the University of Arizona to give every single student on their campus access to a 21st century tool that is necessary if we want to send Cougs out to get incredible jobs after they graduate.
All right, we have one final question from our ASWC president.
To close it out, my question is the most important question of all. The creation of @ASWSU_Prez has been one of my proudest moments. So can you talk about how you utilize that platform that has engaged thousands of not only students, but alumni, faculty, and admin? How will you utilize that platform to advance your own mission and your own ideas and goals?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
no,
this
we
one, yeah.
we were on it forward with,
Sorry.
oh, no, you go first. Go. I already interrupted you too many times tonight.
Sorry. Everyone who follows me on Twitter knows I love Twitter, so I'm always on it, but I think that it's important to utilize it and be active so students know exactly what's happening within ASWSU and interacting with, future Cougs, with alumni, with, President Schultz on his Twitter, anyone who is on Twitter, and making sure that people are aware of what ASWSU is doing, and having, polls similar to how Jordan has had it in the past, where we can bring that data and that information directly to the administration. So utilizing it in many different facets, but continuing to be active on it.
Yeah, it's tweeting every single day. It's getting out what Devin and I are working on every single day, and our staff and what they're working on every single day, to let students know from all parts of our communities and all different communities across campus that we need to continuously have an open discourse with students, and that's a perfect way to do it, again, in a 21st century WSU, but also working with our Department of Communication to expand upon the work you've done with that and make sure that there are other outlets that the Director of Communication and Outreach can directly tell students what's happening, not only in ASWSU, but in their communities they're serving.
All right, so this is something we did in last year's debate, and I think everybody thoroughly enjoyed it. So we're going to bring it back as a tradition for this year's, and we're going to give each candidate 1 minute to say something they admire about each other. We'll start with Savannah.
Okay, I want to talk about how passionate Harold is. If you haven't already seen it today, how he literally just goes in and gets so excited about anything that he talks about, and how it's literally like can't stop, won't stop with Harold. If he is passionate about something, he goes as hard as he can to get everything that he wants to be done. Where Adobe products, even though it was incredibly unfortunate that we couldn't fund that, he's like, no problem, we're coming back next year. We've got it, we're gonna figure out other ways, other areas of fundings. We're gonna do what we wanna do and figure out what we can do to best serve students. And I think that's an amazing quality and trait, and yeah.
Do I get to do one for Devin?
Go ahead.
Oh, yes, okay. So Devin Holsey. What I greatly admire about her is her compassion and her selflessness. There's so many times where within Senate, if someone's having a bad day, or if they're meeting some sort of frustration, Devin is always there to encourage them and say, you're a great leader, you're doing everything you can. And then she's open to how she can help in any sort of way. And she's so compassionate, and she loves everybody. That's something she says all the time is, oh, I love you. And I think she genuinely means that when she says that to people, and that's something that I try to implement in my own life too, is her compassion and her selflessness.
Yeah, Dev's the best. I love you, Devin.
All right, Harold, take it away.
So we got Savannah Rogers, Tyler Partram, Devin Holsey, and also Lindsay Skilproot. That is what we dub as the Senate Leadership Dream Team, and what, well, maybe just me, I don't really know if my colleagues can speak on that, but what Savannah does with external and what Savannah has done in this leadership role, other than just serving her constituents, has been incredible. And again, we touch on the intangibles and what people don't see in ASWSU, and that's a big part of it. It's chairing a committee that sees all these resolutions, that wants to inspire people, that wants to work with people from President Schultz and setting up a dinner so we can all have discourse with the administration, to also working with the city council and working with Glenn Johnson to facilitate meetings between us and our city that we love so much. And the amount of work that Savannah puts in is incredibly admirable and goes deeper than that. It's just something I always respect her for, and it's something that everyone on this campus should respect her for, is chairing a hell of a committee and doing an incredible job this year.
Do I get to do Tyler now?
Yes, Devin.
Okay, so Tyler, wow. I've had the pleasure of working very closely with Tyler this year. He did not start the year as our Senate Finance Chair, and I think that ties in, his role in taking that on ties in with what I think is one of the most valuable qualities in another person, and that's growth and the ability to step up into a role when you see that needs to happen. Tyler is a leader. He is a leader. He has integrity. He has strong core values. He's willing to learn and to grow. And I don't know if I've been more impressed with someone on Senate this year than him in that role. And he has taken it on. He has made it his own. He has brought Finance Committee up. And he's just done an incredible job. And I really appreciate all of the work he's done. And I think he's a wonderful leader.
He can also play a mean game of 2K. That's all I'm saying.
All right, so given our little hiccup with the fire drill, we're not going to subtract any time from either of you because that was a unforeseeable circumstance. So we're going to go into our 3-minute closing, and we're going to start with Savannah since Harold started the evening.
Well, thank you so much to everyone who has come out tonight. We truly appreciate you not only engaging with this debate, but engaging with ASWSU and this entire campaign. It has been, you know, what a whirlwind, but an amazing experience, and we are just so thankful for you all really coming out tonight and engaging. And, you know, it's something that from our passion and what we want to do, the tangible changes that we want to make, we truly believe that we are the best fit for ASWSU president and vice president. We wouldn't be up here if we didn't believe that. So I think that, you know, tonight's been great. Do not stop your engagement here. Don't stop it with voting, you know, on Tuesday and Wednesday. Make sure you stay involved with ASWSU, with WSU, you know, and continue that on.
And over this past month during the campaign season, Savannah and I have had the absolute pleasure of interacting with different students, whether that be, you know, a quick 30-second hello, this is what ASWSU is, or if it's a in-depth conversation with different chapters, with different people, and taking into account all these ideas, taking into account all the things that they don't like and all the things that they do like, and taking that back, that's something that we are incredibly passionate about. And not just being this one time, not just ending next week, not even ending next year. We want this to be something where we are a continuous presence in these students' lives, where we hear their stories, we hear what they want changed, and we are here for them to serve those students.
Yeah, we want this to be your student government, and that begins with the 100-day plan that we want to roll out. You know, going back to different student organizations, going back to knocking on doors within apartment land, you know, hearing from students in every corner of campus and off campus, and really making this 100-day plan something that we work together on and we create so that, you know, we are held accountable and it's changes that you want to see occur. You know, making sure that, you know, if you say that you want something and it's not originally in the 100-day plan, we add it to that, and so that we're not leaving any COOG behind within, you know, our administration. So we want to remind everyone to vote. Voting is Tuesday and Wednesday. Make sure you vote. Last year, not as many students voted, and Jordan and Garrett represent all students on campus, not just the, you know, 20 or so % that voted. So make sure that you vote. We truly believe and hope that we have earned your vote, but if not, just end up voting. And as always, go Cougs.
We good to start?
Yes, sir.
Sounds great. Well, embracing our communities. It is entirely what this campaign is about. Again, it's not about myself or Devin or anyone in our close campaign team. It is about everyone in the crowd here, everyone watching online, everyone that we've interacted with throughout apartment land, College Hill, and on campus. It's doing more than actual feedback loops and incorporating what you say, but also saying that we want you a part of this process. ASWSU has the incredible power to do so much good on this campus, and sometimes we think it gets lost. It gets lost in the wickets, it gets lost because we have the same people coming in, and again, the incredible work that has been done by representatives of you in your student government should be respected and absolutely held in high regard. But again, this is a time for a culture shift. It's a time to include as many voices and more voices than we've seen in the 100-year history of ASWSU. And again, speaking on myself being a part of the association for 3 years and Devin for 2, we can see how this is going to work out. We know we're going to be able to implement this, and we want people to be in there with us, because this should be a fun thing. We should be talking about your passions. We should be talking about what makes you love this university and facilitating how you're going to go about that when you graduate. Again, you put the diploma on the wall and you say, go Cougs wherever you go, even if it's in an airport or you're in the Palouse Hills or you're back home. It's being proud of your experience you had here, and ASWSU has the power to facilitate that more than any other organization on this campus.
I think I can speak for both Rawld and myself when I say going out, speaking to students, taking in that information, using it to change our perspective, using it to change the things we want to do. That's kind of our jam. We both really enjoy that. We love getting to talk to students, and we think that's something that has to be a priority in ASWSU. That is our most important priority, is going out, doing that outreach, and I think that's something we want to continue, but also we really want to bring in voices. We really, when we talk about embracing our communities, we mean that literally, like bringing them into the fold. And especially with our University Affairs Department, getting people on boards. Like really, this is the less glamorous part of ASWSU. There's a lot of committees, y'all. There's committees for everything. There's committees for parking, there's committees for sidewalks, there's committees for every minute thing you can imagine on this campus. And while that doesn't sound super glamorous, that's where change happens. That's literally where the change happens. It's in those rooms when you're working with administration and you're bringing in that student perspective. And so we really think it's important that we bring students into that fold. Again, it shouldn't be one person going to 15 committee meetings, because that's only one perspective. It should be 15 people people going to 15 committee meetings. And so that is our priority as well, is making ASWSU about students by bringing students in.
And this started for us in March of 2017. And the fact that we're 1 year later having the opportunity to speak to so many students, and I am so happy that I've had the incredible opportunity to serve in these roles with Devin Halsey, that this campaign is going to amplify your voice, it's going to expand your communities, it's going to progress what ASWSU means, it's going to prioritize your collegiate well-being and revitalize the Cougar spirit.
All right, well, that concludes our debate. Round of applause for don't forget, voting is March 6th and 7th, and you can vote at studentvote.wsu.edu.